Stop trusting the lines on the atlas. Look closely at the map hanging in every classroom around the world. What if that wasn't a historical artifact, but a chilling, active prediction, a secret blueprint for total global control? For decades, the seminal and often dismissed text, "Behold a Pale Horse," has been treated as fringe paranoia. But its most explosive claims weren't about aliens or underground bases. They centered on a strategic, systematic partition of the world, a planned redrawing of all political borders, designed specifically to establish a new world order. Now forget the conspiracy theories you've heard. We are going to look at cold, hard visual evidence. We are examining specific claims made in the book about how the United Nations would regionalize the planet, creating massive superstates, effectively erasing national identity. And then, we're going to compare that model directly against the explicit, often overlooked border changes shown in recent high-level political presentations. The resemblance is terrifying. This is the hidden truth about how power is being consolidated right now, and how the world map you trust might already be obsolete. We're talking about an operational framework for global governance that was detailed decades before the technology existed to enforce it. If you've heard about the alleged UN regionalization plan before, or if this whole idea of secret world maps is news to you, stop for a second, hit that like button, and tell me, comment your theory here underneath. Do you think the world is being carved up right now, or is this just a coincidence? Stop what you are doing. Look closely at the official United Nations logo. It's an image of the Earth, flanked by olive branches, centered perfectly on the North Pole. But look closer. It uses a specific cartographical projection, the Azimuthal Equidistant, and it completely lops off Antarctica, leaving a swirling, almost abstract void at the bottom. Why? Is it just a design choice? Or is this map, which hangs in every major international assembly room, a subtle hidden blueprint for global governance? Today we are diving deep into one of the most persistent and often dismissed claims in modern geopolitical theory, the UN map secret. We're going to juxtapose the explicit claims made in seminal conspiracy texts, like William Cooper's infamous "Behold a Pale Horse," against actual verifiable changes in how the world's most powerful organizations are beginning to draw their internal borders. You see, most of us look at the world and see 195 sovereign nations. But what if those political lines are becoming functionally irrelevant? The UN map isn't just about what they include, it's about the projection they use. The Azimuthal Equidistant projection is unique because it forces the viewer to see the world not as a collection of separate states, but as a unified sphere radiating out from a central point, in this case the North Pole. Cartographically, this choice subtly promotes the idea of centralized management. It suggests a single point of control is equally distant from all points on the map. Now let's talk about the alleged blueprint. Back in the early 1990s, Cooper claimed, based on internal documents he alleged to have seen, that the global elite had already decided to partition the world into 10 distinct, self-governing regional zones, often referred to as kingdoms by the theorists, which would eventually supersede national sovereignty. The purpose? To simplify administration, control resources and manage massive population shifts during periods of economic or environmental collapse. Imagine trying to manage the traffic in a city like New York, but instead of using traffic lights, you tried to control every single driver's individual will. Impossible. But if you divide the city into 5 massive districts and manage the flow between those districts, control becomes feasible. That's the analogy these global governance models allegedly follow. They don't erase the US, China, or Brazil overnight. They simply make the decisions at a higher regional level, bypassing the national legislatures. But here is where the theory takes a shocking turn, especially regarding the United States. Cooper claimed that the US itself would be divided into 7 or 10 specific regions, sometimes aligning with what we now know as FEMA regions. These aren't just administrative zones for disaster relief. The theory suggests they are the foundational units for future regional governors loyal to a global authority. And this isn't just ancient history from a fringe book. Look at how modern organizations actually operate. The European Union is the most obvious example of regional governance, superseding national borders, centralizing currency, and unifying legal standards. But look at the subtle slow-motion integration happening in North America. We had NAFTA, then USMCA. These aren't just trade deals. They create a single economic megazone where goods, labor, and capital flow with increasing ease across the lines between the US, Canada, and Mexico. These deals are the definition of a soft border, Politically, the lines exist, but economically and logistically they are melting away. And there is one detail that you absolutely won't see on your standard political map, but is crucial to this global blueprint: the control of freshwater resources. The future of global governance isn't determined by who controls oil fields. It's determined by who controls the water pipelines and the major aquifers. When you look at the proposed regional partitions, especially those mapping the North American continent, they often ignore traditional state lines and instead follow watershed boundaries, major river systems, and geological resource deposits. Think about the massive Ogallala Aquifer that stretches across 8 U.S. states. A regional governing body focused on resource sustainability for the entire North American zone wouldn't care about the political boundary between Kansas and Nebraska. They would care about managing the flow of the entire aquifer system. These resource zones become the de facto borders of the future. This is the hidden genius of the alleged plan. You don't need tanks to invade a country if you can control its food and water supply through centralized resource management dictated by a transnational board. Now let's bring in the visual evidence that keeps this debate alive. Every time you see a major climate summit or a global economic forum presentation, pay attention to the maps they use. You will often see the world colored not by nation, but by economic bloc: the ASEAN bloc, the African Union bloc, the North American bloc, the Eurasian Economic Union. These blocs are often presented as unified single-color entities, reinforcing the idea that the true power structures are regional, not national. But what about the massive unexplained anomaly on the UN map? Why is Antarctica excluded? Some theorists claim this is because Antarctica is designated as the ultimate neutral territory, a global reserve protected by treaty, exempt from national claims, and therefore the perfect place for a truly global, non-national headquarters. It's the ultimate symbol of territory managed exclusively by international treaty, bypassing all sovereign powers. It's the blank slate upon which global governance can project its rules without historical baggage. Whether or not you believe in the specific claims of a shadowy elite plotting world domination, the mechanism described is undeniably at play in modern geopolitics: the shift from hard sovereignty to soft regional administration. If you found this deep dive into invisible borders and hidden cartography surprising, hit that like button right now and comment below. Which regional bloc do you think holds the most power right now? The evidence suggests that the world's powerful players are already operating on a map that the average citizen never sees, a map defined not by flags, but by resources, supply chains, and centralized economic control. And the UN logo, hanging silently above every global debate, might just be the official seal of the new world order they are building, one soft border at a time. Stop what you are doing. Look at any official United Nations document and find the logo. You see the world map framed by olive branches, right? Looks peaceful, looks normal. But what if I told you that map is not just a symbol of global unity, but a secret blueprint, a hidden plan for how the world is meant to be carved up and controlled? We are diving deep into the claims surrounding the UN map secret, a theory that suggests the borders you learned in geography class are already obsolete, and the biggest geopolitical players have agreed on a radical new system of global governance, a system where nations disappear into super-regions. This idea gained massive traction decades ago in texts like "Behold a Pale Horse," which argued that the global elite were planning to dismantle national sovereignty and reorganize the planet into 10 centralized economic zones, managed by a single world authority. Now I know what you're thinking: classic conspiracy theory. But hold that thought, because when you look closely at the UN's own cartography and compare it to recent global economic and political developments, the claims start to feel unnervingly precise. Let's start with the map itself. It's not a standard Mercator projection, the rectangular one we usually see. The UN uses something called the Azimuthal Equidistant projection. Imagine taking a globe, planting a pin directly on the North Pole, and flattening the entire world outward from that single point. That's what you get. Why the North Pole? Geographically, it's the most difficult place on Earth to access, controlled by no single nation, yet it sits at the intersection of 3 major powers: North America, Europe, and Asia. It visually unifies the Northern Hemisphere as the center of power, pushing the southern continents to the periphery. It subtly frames the world not as a collection of equal states, but as a system radiating outward from a central point of control. But here's where the actual blueprint claims begin. The theory suggests this new world order requires the creation of superstates, regional blocs that erase national borders for the sake of simplified trade, resource management, and unified military command. Think of it like merging small companies into massive conglomerates. For example, the plan allegedly called for the complete dissolution of borders across North America, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, into a singular economic and political entity, often dubbed the North American Union. Sounds far-fetched until you look at the real-world push for deep integration agreements and the constant debate over continental standardization. It's a slow bureaucratic erosion of sovereignty, happening piece by piece. And it's not just North America. We see the same pattern in Europe, where the EU started as a coal and steel union and expanded exponentially, centralizing financial and legislative power away from individual parliaments. The theory argues that the EU is simply Zone 1 in the larger blueprint. Now let's talk about the visual structure of the UN map itself. If you look closely at the Azimuthal Equidistant projection on the logo, the map is divided into precisely 33 sections or segments, radiating out from the center. Why 33? To the uninitiated, it's just a design choice. But for those steeped in esoteric history and ancient mystery schools, which often feature the number 33 as a high degree of knowledge or mastery, it suggests a deeply intentional, symbolic foundation for the organization. It whispers of a hidden architecture. And here's a detail most people miss. The olive branches that frame the map. They are traditionally symbols of peace, dating back to Greek and Roman antiquity. But in the context of the Roman Empire, the olive branch wasn't just about truce. It was often presented as a symbol of dominion, a peace enforced by overwhelming power. It's the ultimate visual double entendre, unity through submission. E tem mais detalhe que você não imagina. The theory claims that the final stage of this partitioning involves merging the African continent into unified regional zones and, crucially, managing global resources, specifically water and food, through these super-regional authorities, ensuring that only the central governing body holds the power to allocate life-sustaining supplies. Think about the global push for climate accords and centralized carbon tracking. While presented as environmental necessity, the blueprint theorists argue that this is simply the mechanism being used to justify the centralization of resource control, tying economic activity directly to compliance with the global administrative structure. The map isn't just about drawing lines. It's about controlling the flow of everything that crosses those lines. If you are already questioning the maps you learned in school and the true purpose behind global organizations, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because we are just scratching the surface of the world's hidden blueprints. Because the most shocking claim is not about the borders being erased, but the borders being imposed. The theory suggests that any nation that resists regionalization will be politically and economically isolated, forced back into compliance by the pressures of the centralized system. It's a carrot-and-stick approach on a planetary scale. When you see headlines about trade wars, border crises, and the debate over national versus global citizenship, remember that UN map. Remember the 33 segments. Is it just a symbol of hope, or is it the exact diagram of a future world that has already been decided? The answer, like the map itself, depends entirely on where you choose to stand. Stop scrolling. Look closely at the map of the world hanging in your classroom or office, the familiar patchwork of colors, the rigid lines separating countries you learned in grade school. Now, forget it, because according to some of the most enduring, yet widely dismissed claims in modern history, that map is a lie. We're not talking about flat Earth or hollow cores. We're diving into the hidden blueprint for global governance, a plan so detailed it allegedly involves redrawing the borders of entire continents. This idea gained explosive traction back in 1991 with the publication of William Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse. Cooper outlined an alleged structure where national sovereignty would eventually dissolve, replaced by vast, interlocking super-regions controlled by a single centralized governing body. Think of it like this. Your current country isn't a sovereign house, it's just a franchise store, and the global elite have decided it's time to merge all the small franchises into 10 massive regional headquarters. But this isn't just theory. The reason this concept terrifies people is the uncanny way it seems to align with real-world cartography. The United Nations, for example, already operates through 5 major regional economic commissions: Europe, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Asia and the Pacific, and Western Asia. On the surface, these are just collaborative bodies designed to boost commerce and development. Logical, right? But critics point to the specific overlap between these operational zones and the alleged 10 Kingdoms model described in the conspiracy literature. When you look at certain official UN internal maps designed for logistical planning, disaster response and economic standardization, the traditional national boundaries begin to fade. They are replaced by massive, seamless zones. In these maps, the line separating, say, the US and Canada becomes less important than the line separating North America from the Pacific Rim bloc. It's a cartographic sleight of hand. The map is the message. To understand the power of this, we have to look back at how maps shape our reality. The famous Mercator projection, which we all grew up with, dramatically inflates the size of land masses closer to the poles, making Greenland look huge and Europe look dominant. This wasn't an accident, it was a political statement rooted in European colonialism. The new global governance maps aren't trying to make one region look bigger. They are trying to make all regions look functionally the same. They are standardizing the economic landscape, making it easier to administer things like global treaties, standardized taxation, and crucially, digital identities. Imagine trying to run a massive interconnected digital currency system across 195 independently governed nations, each with its own laws and firewalls. It's a logistical nightmare. Now imagine running that system across just 10 massive economic zones, each committed to the same set of supranational rules. The friction disappears. The borders become, for all intents and purposes, invisible. This brings us to the ultimate plot twist that few people consider. If the goal is truly global governance, the borders don't have to be physically erased. They just have to become functionally irrelevant. Look at recent high-level political presentations where speakers use maps that are highly simplified, showing continents segmented by color but often neglecting internal national lines. These aren't just simplified graphics. They are subtle, visual primers for a world where your identity is tied not to your nation, but to your region, a region governed by global metrics, not local laws. The alleged blueprint isn't about invading armies, it's about administrative efficiency. The new world map might look exactly the same on the surface, but if the plan is real, the borders you know are already ghosts. If you were surprised by the idea that cartography could be a weapon of governance, hit the like button right now and tell me in the comments, do you think the push for global standardization is just efficient business, or is it part of a hidden plan? Subscribe for more deep dives into the secrets hidden in plain sight. Until next time, remember, always question the map.